Now we're moving to rugby. Alan Quinlan, good morning to you.
Morning, lads. How are you?
Flying, thanks, yeah. There's so much to chat about. We might start with Stuart Lancaster and the bombshell that dropped this week. Nothing confirmed just yet. By all accounts, he's to jump on a Zoom with the owner and the current head coach at Racing at some point over the weekend, and perhaps after all of that, he'll be handing in his notice to leave, to spend the rest of the season, obviously, and leave at that point. What's your assessment of Lancaster's, the impact of Lancaster leaving on Leinster would be?
I think Leo Cullen summed it up yesterday. When you're in Leinster's position, there's always going to be somebody kind of hovering around, looking at their coaches, looking at possibly some of their players as well. I know that the players probably don't move that much, and particularly the Irish guys, but their success in recent years and what he's done with Leinster has obviously attracted a lot of clubs, and this is not the first time it's come up about Stuart Lancaster possibly being wanted by somebody else. It did a couple of years ago with Australia. There was talks that he may take that job and that they were interested. I think any club would be interested in him, given what he's done with Leinster and obviously what you hear about what the players speak about him. So, you know, you think back to the situation in 2015 with England, and the way that ended so disappointingly. And I ended up interviewing him last year, and you know, he constantly brings that up, how it was obviously part and parcel of coaching and setbacks and disappointments, but it still hurts him a lot. I think Leinster has obviously been a real refreshment for him. He's enjoyed working with a very elite group of players and had brilliant success, I think, and he takes the disappointment badly as well. I think last year's Champions Cup final loss and the semi-final in the URC was incredibly disappointing, obviously, for him. But you know, I think it's kind of speculation, but it's not a surprise for me that, number one, that somebody would come looking for him, and that maybe if he does decide to go, that, you know, you couldn't argue against him maybe changing his position. Maybe, you know, I always thought he'd go back to international rugby, and that would be a big attraction. But Racing are a very big club, and financial package there would be very, very strong as well. So, and for him to kind of take sole control of a team, it wouldn't surprise me if that happens again. So it's down to his success and Leinster's success, and it's obviously, you know, he hasn't been offered or given a contract extension, I don't think, or he obviously hasn't been in a position to refuse that. So maybe Leinster will offer that contract, and it might not happen, but it's certainly big news.
If you're, there's two aspects to it, and so the first one on that exact point, Quinny. If you're the IRFU / Leinster looking at all this unfolding, is there an opportunity now to go, listen, it's Friday, he's going to be having these Zooms over the weekend, let's get in contact, let's try to firm something up here, let's get a counter offer? Would you be pushing the boat out? Is he that important to make sure that he's locked down?
Well, I think he is incredibly important to Leinster, and has done a great job. But I presume his agent would have, you know, you have agents for these things, and they have conversations. So sometimes, you know, just look at Leo Cullen's situation himself, signing a 1-year deal, and he's done that for a couple of years. Sometimes people are pretty relaxed about not kind of about, you know, getting to this time of year, and traditionally this is when players start signing contracts for if they're up the following season, and it's the same for coaches. It's not like, you know, soccer in the Premiership where you're a year and a half out and you're signing new contracts. I suppose that's because they get into that free contract situation. They can move for nothing, and there's a big financial implication. But I think let's not be naive, Adrian, to think that Leinster or the RFU, there hasn't been discussions about this. They wouldn't just be blindsided with this situation. So we don't know the exact details there. I'm sure that if Stuart Lancaster wants to extend his contract, I'm sure the RFU and Leinster would be very happy to do that, unless there's some sort of ambition for change and stuff like that. So yeah, I would. Maybe they've got to, if Leinster really want him to stay, they've got to get on it now a bit more aggressively, I would imagine.
Johnny Sexton obviously retires, or possibly retires, depending on how much you believe what Leo Cullen was saying the other week at the end of this, at the end of the World Cup. It seems like he's a guy obviously who had a big reputation early in his career for being a bit cranky with teammates and a bit of a barker around the pitch, but that over the last number of years he's morphed into a slightly different personality that might be more aligned with, let's say, a senior coaching role at a club. Is there any possibility that once he hangs up the boots that a position becomes available? He knows the culture, he's driven the culture between himself and Cullen and Lancaster over the last number of years, that he'd be an ideal fit in so many ways.
Yeah, I'm sure he would. I was having a conversation with someone the other day about coaching, and look, a lot of good players make very good coaches, but some good players don't make good coaches. So
are you thinking he wouldn't?
No, I'm not. I'm just saying that it doesn't necessarily mean it's always a risk for any player coming out of the game, no matter how good they are, going straight into coach a team because of the familiarity, the lack of experience. It's a different type of role. Some players can do it. Anthony Foley did it in Munster. He came straight out practically. He actually went in with the academy and the A team for a year or two. Rog obviously went off to France. Some people do it. Sean O'Brien has come out of London Irish. He's gone in, as a coach for Leinster. But for someone like Johnny to step into the Stuart Lancaster role, could he do it? Of course he could do it. I think he's practically, similar to Ronan O'Gara when he was at Munster. He's coaching a lot of that stuff anyway, and he's stuck in the middle of a lot of the sessions and the vocal stuff and in those sessions and the way the team trained. So of course he could do it, but there is always a risk because of that familiarity, and one day being a player and the next day being a head coach. I'm not saying it can't be done, but again, it's kind of like hypothetical because you're kind of thinking, Leinster make a decision on this. It's if Stuart Lancaster leaves, would Johnny Sexton be someone that could step straight in there? Yeah, I've no doubt he could. It depends what the player wants himself. Maybe he'll want to do something different. But sometimes these opportunities happen in your life where something happens for a reason, and there is an opportunity. And if he was retiring and stepped straight into that role, I'm sure it would be, it could really work for both club and the player. But undoubtedly he you look at Drico. I always thought Drico would be a coach and could be a coach, and Paul didn't do it for a couple of years, and after he retired, and he's making a great job of it now. So it just depends what the individual wants themselves. Do they want to break from that environment and go somewhere else, or possibly go straight into it? But I think the transition would be pretty seamless as regards, knowing the culture, as you say, and that's really important, and knowing the standards. But when you're friends with guys and close to fellas that close, it can sometimes be risky.
Yeah. When we look at the action, we've obviously at last some games to talk about as well. Quinny, obviously round one of the URC done. Ulster, I presume, probably the only one that are really satisfied after the opening weekend. How impressed with Ulster were you?
Yeah, kind of double-edged sword. Impressed with Ulster, but disappointed with Connacht. I think Ulster certainly look, and they've shown it in the last number of years, and we've consistently been speaking about their consistency and being able to back it up in really big games. They're capable of that kind of performance against anybody in Belfast. And when I was talking to Gerard Monday morning about it, I think I was thinking afterwards, was I a bit harsh on Connacht, because the other provinces could go to Belfast and struggle there. When they kind of get their mojo going and they get on the front foot and they get tempo in their game, they can do that kind of stuff to teams. They're capable of it. They're, when they get their tails up, they're very, very dangerous. And when you look at where they finished the season, I think they would have probably, beating Munster convincingly in that quarter-final. They should have beaten the Stormers probably I think they should have laid try in the semi-final. They could have easily been in a final of the URC. As always, the challenge for them is up front, and that physicality and that physical battle. But it's very early days for all these teams, Adrian. I think Dan McFarlane certainly be really pleased with the start. I think it was great to see Luke Marshall back as well. He's had such a stop-start couple of seasons with injuries. Stuart McCluskey was brilliant. Nathan Doak, I think, is really maturing as a player. And, you know, they've got a lot of young players coming through. Balakoon is back. Jacob Stockdale had a few brilliant touches. So if their forwards deliver on a consistent basis to the backline that they have a a lot of dangerous players out wide. And obviously it's going to be a different challenge from this week going to the Scarlets, who themselves, there's some similarities about, you know, the type of game that they're capable of playing, both sides, you know, scoring a lot of tries, but conceding scores as well. And, you know, so I think it was a really good start for them, definitely, in an inter-pro game where Connacht have gone there in a couple of times in the last couple of seasons and won. So I think certainly, you know, they can build a bit of momentum from this and, you know, be confident going over to Wales at the weekend.
You mentioned Connacht there. Do you give them any hope over the next couple of weeks? Because obviously they have to go to South Africa. They come back. They have a quite horrendous run of fixtures in general. And from the last game, I don't know, I didn't put a lot of faith in what you might get out of them. And how do you come back from that start of a season as well if it does go as badly as it looks like it might?
Yeah, it's very difficult for them. And you think confidence-wise, look, it was always going to be difficult start for them going to Belfast, and it's a really tough start for them. You know, having to go to Belfast, play Ulster, and then go to South Africa for a couple of weeks. But sometimes, and I listened to Peter Wilkins talking about it the other day, and Andy Friend, you know, they have an opportunity maybe to galvanise themselves. The South African teams at the moment will be missing some of their Springbok players. Obviously, that's a little bit different from the second half of last season when all the South African teams were very, very strong and they had all those international players with them. So, yeah, I think they've got to kind of pull together. Connacht, you know, play a really good brand of rugby and they're very exciting to watch. But they've got to get their fundamentals right. They're particularly scrum line-out and that breakdown. And, you know, they struggled last week at the breakdown and they were physically kind of out-muscled. Ulster did a lot of damage with their maul. So, you know, for Peter Wilkins and Andy Friend, they have a couple of players coming back that'll certainly boost them. They have their, you know, emerging Ireland players who will join up with Ireland in South Africa. So at least they get to play with them as well. So I think they have a chance, certainly have a chance. But, you know, it'd be great for them if they can win one of the games in the next 2 weeks. But, you know, against the Stormers tomorrow, I think it's you know, they need to get something out of that. If they don't get the result, they need to play well. They need to get a little bit of confidence built up again and a bit of a feel-good factor back within the team and not panic. But, you know, we know these games, they can run away from you very quickly. You know, you suddenly could be 6 or 7 games in and Connacht are scrambling for a win. They want to get into Europe and want to be in the playoffs as well. So next couple of weeks are really vital for them for sure.
You could say some of the same stuff about Munster, and we'll come to the activity on the pitch in just a minute, Quinny, but definitely wanted to mention as well that the Irish Independent have been reporting today that Chris Farrell has stepped away from Munster. It's a very serious issue. To quote some of the piece here by Shane Phelan in the paper this morning, that he's saying that they've had a statement from Munster confirming that Chris Farrell will not be involved with the team while French legal process is ongoing. And this all relates to, as they say, his involvement with Munster rugby, stepping away from that after cases against him and 4 other rugby players were referred to a French criminal court following allegations that a young woman was raped. He isn't accused of rape but is facing an accusation of not stopping a crime along with another player. And then there are 4 other players who are facing more serious allegations. So with all that in the mix, as I said, Munster Rugby have issued a statement. They say that Munster Rugby and Chris Farrell have agreed that with immediate effect he'll be stepping back from his involvement with the Munster squad whilst legal proceedings in France concerning his alleged involvement as a witness to an alleged crime in 2017 are ongoing. As this is an active legal matter before the French courts, we have no further comment. So that's the statement given to the Irish Independent from Munster. It's a very serious matter and a very straightforward set of events in terms of him stepping away, Quinny.
It is, and it's obviously pretty alarming situation for everybody involved. We've got to be very careful of what we say here. I think I just read about that last night. I was shocked. Because I know he was questioned a couple of years in that, and years ago when that happened, and didn't have any investigate or didn't have any allegation of being involved in it at the time. But so I'm a bit shocked that this has come out. I know that it comes from an investigation last year where it's a separate investigation where he's alleged to have not stopped a crime. So I don't understand enough about the situation, but when the trial will be, how long he'll be out of rugby, and it's obviously merited a situation that this could go on for a while, and that he could have a problem here, or he's got to defend himself in whatever way his legal team see fit. So it's obviously alarming news, to say the least, that this situation has cropped up. And again, I just saw it late last night, so I don't know. I didn't. I'm going to try and find out more. Obviously, how long when is the trial going to be? How long is he going to be out of rugby? But obviously, we've got to. There's a lot of people involved in this, and it's certainly a sensitive situation. So, I don't know when the trial is going to be or when this is going to play out. But obviously, Munster have seen fit, and Chris Farrell has seen fit to say that this is a challenge going forward, and obviously he has something. He's got to defend himself, and that being in around the Munster club and playing matches is something that they don't see him capable of doing at the moment.
Yeah, and that is a reasonable stance, and we obviously have history in relation to this general topic matter on this island, so it's not as if it's brand new territory, and we shall follow it and report on it as events unfold, as you say, in terms of dates and that from the French courts. Talk to us about some of the aspects in relation to Connacht that you were talking about the scrums and the lineouts, and certainly in a Munster context against Cardiff last weekend, so stuff like missed tackles, maybe generally just not as sharp as you want. Obviously a lot of Ireland players to come back into the mix. How long before we can start critically analysing the Munster coaching ticket?
That's a really good question, Adrian, because I definitely think we have to, and Munster fans alike, have to be patient. This is going to take a little bit of time. I think to play with the type of tempo and energy that I think the new coaches want. I think there's a complete change in the way they want to play, and I think we saw glimpses of that last week in their kicking game, in their shape that they were trying to achieve throughout the multi-phase, even our first and second phase, just the different lines of running and stuff like that. They got some of that stuff wrong. There's no doubt about it. Players in the backfield were getting isolated. Number of Munster players ahead of the ball carrier at times. And then they lost the breakdown. So I think there needs to be patience. And how long do we need that patience, I think was your question. I think you've got to see glimpses of improvement throughout, as you go on. So in other words, going to the Dragons at the weekend, the drop balls that we saw a lot of last weekend, they need to get that right and just protect the ball a little bit more, because aside from any sort of game plan changing stuff that's going on, simple catch pass has to be executed, and unfortunately last weekend they made the game difficult for themselves by turning the ball over themselves in crucial areas, and then in turn Cardiff put a lot of pressure on them in the second half and caused them issues at the breakdown. So if they look back at the video and they see that maybe there's 9 or 10 situations there where, even 50% better in those situations, well, you never know. You might have got a try or two out of that. And so I think we've got to see an immediate improvement in the ball skills, just the catch pass stuff and not to turn the ball over. The defensive stuff that you mentioned, I think that's just some shape. Look, Fineen Wycherley, very, very powerful guy. He's a very physical player. On that first tackle on Max Llewellyn, he just doesn't hit and stick, I think. And Llewellyn does really well and gets away and scores the try. I think the other ones from the set piece, Alex Kendellen had a heavy knock a couple of minutes before that and looked dazed, to be honest. And Munster ended up taking him off shortly after that anyway. On another day, he's up 10 yards, closes that space, and that gap for Llewellyn again isn't there. And I think the last one is it's a 3-on-3, and I think it's poor defending. So they'd have been disappointed with the tries they conceded. But on the balance of play, Cardiff were probably the stronger side. And, if Munster got a win there, I think Cardiff would have been really, really disappointed in what they did. They probably had enough possession and pressure and moments in the game to win it. But Munster could have come out of that game with a win. I think they got themselves back into a great position. So there's something to build on there. They certainly have a lot to work on. And I think the patience is you're probably looking at half a season, up to Christmas with a view to, really going, God, that's absolutely brilliant to change and what they're trying to do. It's going to take a little bit of time because their pre-season would have been pretty short. I think they had 2 breaks in that. Integrating the players back in, lots of chopping and changing in pre-season. So, maybe we'll see some, positive steps in the next couple of weeks, but I think it's going to take a few months.
Yeah. One last one. We've one comment in from HC saying Rog for Leinster, which I think we've long established is probably not going to be all that likely. He is going to be serving a 6-week touchline ban. He disrespected the authority of a match official during the La Rochelle game against Lyon a couple of weeks ago. So he's got a few weeks to cool his jets, Quinny.
Is he getting an off the ball ban as well for a couple of weeks? Yeah, sure. Look, he's. He'll kill me for smiling about this, but that's what I did when I saw it. I knew he had something coming up, all right. But he's very emotional, and I think maybe it's not for me to tell him what to do, but he's got to probably be a little bit more careful because I think opposition coaches will try and rile him as well. He had that issue with Urias, the Bordeaux coach, last year, and I think we all get frustrated with referees at times, and when he's down close to the touchline like that, and some of the decisions can be baffling, but he's probably got to temper his emotion a little bit better. But he's probably. Is he banned now from actually going to the games?
Just touchline.
He's got to be up in the touchline ban, so he's got to be up in the stands. So yeah, he'll have a few weeks to cool off. So
yeah, we'll probably catch up with him at some point over the next few weeks. Quinny, thanks a million.
Cheers. Thanks, Adrian.